It's time for your Low Country Real Estate Market Update. It's the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show. Brian is one of the top 1% real estate agents in Charleston. Find him online at listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. Or call him at 843-345-1273. Now, broadcasting from the WTMA studios, here's your host, Brian Beatty.
Good morning, Charleston, and welcome to another edition of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com. I'm your host, Brian Beatty. Been on this program for 8 years, giving you my opinion and sharing my experiences with you about the real estate market as somebody that's been licensed for the past 16 years. I've been in the top 1% of agents here every year since 2009. And I just hope you guys understand what's happening in the real estate world. You know, I want to give you expectations about the process, the market, what you're going to experience if you're going to buy, sell, or invest in real estate this year. A lot of folks just like to stay up to date with what's happening in the market. And so I also share my experiences as, you know, again, somebody that's been selling real estate here, sold well over $500,000 worth of real estate, getting close to $1 billion worth of real estate sold, which is a cool stat for me to be able to say. That was a benchmark of mine when I first got licensed. But today I want to talk about what's going on in the market. I want you to understand what you're going to experience more than likely if you're going to buy a home this year, if you're going to sell a home this year. We're going to talk a little bit about investments. You know, if you're sitting on some cash right now, does it make sense to buy a rental? Should we go out and try and flip some property? Are there some alternatives to just the traditional process of buying a home? So we're going to talk about that and a few other things along the way. First, we're going to start with just what's going on in the market. I'm going to help you guys understand where we are right now in relation to this time last year, where basically we've just crossed the 1 year anniversary of COVID, and you know we've been dealing with that. The market reacted rather surprisingly, I think, and has just been absolutely on fire. I mean, if you guys have been watching it or if you've been listening to the show, you know that prices have skyrocketed, inventory has plummeted, interest rates have ticked up a little bit. We'll talk about that in just a minute, and you know what I think is going to happen throughout the course of the rest of the year. If you'd like to reach out to me at any point, though, if you want to have a conversation with me about the real estate market, about your plans to buy, sell, or invest in real estate, whether it's this year, next year, whether you just have some general questions you'd like to have answered, or maybe you need some help. Maybe you just need a good contact for a contractor or a builder, whatever. Happy to help in any way I can. My number, if you want to reach out to me directly, which you can call or text, is 843-400-8009. That's my personal number, 843-400-8009. Or you can visit us online, listingsincharleston.com. We continue to put a lot of work into adding content to that site so that it can really be a resource center for you. So listingsincharleston.com, gosh, 8 years worth of videos of us doing this radio show are on that website or that you have access to. A lot of other great stuff on there as well. Of course, search the MLS, find out how much your home is worth, learn more about some of our guarantees and some of the things that we're doing to help folks, especially in a market like this. We're selling properties in basically less than a week. So we've decided to drop our listing commission, 2.4%. We want to pass those savings on to you. So listingsincharleston.com is the website, or you can always shoot me an email. Brian, that's Brian with an I, at brianbeattyteam.com. Brian at brianbeattyteam.com. So let's get into it. Let's talk about the market. I'm going to talk about the Charleston market, but first I want to talk about the Federal Reserve's meeting this week on Wednesday. They said that they're likely not going to raise rates. Rates won't rise until 2023, despite some, of course, growing some concerns about inflation. And they said that their economic growth projection is at 6.5%, which is about 3 times that of normal economic growth. They're anticipating a better jobs market. They're anticipating unemployment to go down. So really all good things from that report. But what I want you guys to understand is that the Federal Reserve controls short-term interest rates. Mortgage rates are long-term rates, and mortgage lenders really kind of take their cues from the bond market when setting the rates that they charge to borrowers. So the Fed funds rate in and of itself doesn't really have an impact, so to speak, on mortgage rates. They really kind of track the direction of the 10-year Treasury. But even that relationship isn't foolproof. I mean, that relationship can vary. I mean, you saw that the 10-year Treasury rates were on an upward trend from August of last year, but mortgage rates still were falling up until really last month. But they have gone up. You know, if you look at the actual impact of the increase in interest rates, which is, again, not much, But if you look at a traditional kind of $300,000 mortgage, it means that now compared to the beginning of the year, you're paying about an extra $70 a month. So the Fed does have, some things to do with interest rates. Like obviously their stance on purchasing mortgage-backed securities has given lenders the liquidity that they need in the market. And they've kind of reaffirmed their commitment to do that and to ongoing asset purchases. But they also acknowledge that, hey, at some point, right, this is going to have to taper off. And that should help the, slow down the rise of interest rates that we've been seeing over the past few months. But either way, we're still at around 3%. It's still a fantastic interest rate. It's still just a very strong market for folks that are getting mortgages. When we look at the Charleston market, though, I want to give you guys an understanding of kind of where we are right now and where we were this time last year. So when we look at the number of listings that we put on the market, every day, we've put about the same number of new listings on the market year to date as we have this time last year. It's a little over 4,000 properties on the market. So there's not a ton of change there. We're down about 10% in terms of adding inventory to the market. But what's happening is that inventory is being absorbed at a much faster rate. It's being absorbed. We have about 25% more properties under contract, properties being acquired compared to this time last year, which is really interesting when you look at the actual inventory of homes for sale. At the end of February, we had a little over 1,700 homes available for sale. That's down almost 70% because in February of 2020, we had 5,400 homes available for sale. I just checked right now, we're at 1,600 properties available for sale. So that's why you're seeing days on market drop drastically. The average in the market is still 41 days, which is a decent amount of time, but we all know that if a property is priced well, it's in good condition, it's marketed well, it's going to sell in a few days. The challenge that I think a lot of sellers have right now, and this is true, this is a real thing, is they'll put the property on the market and assuming it was the strategy to generate multiple offers, because you've got, two different basic styles when listing a property. Either list it for what it's worth and let buyers fight over it, which gives you, the seller, in my opinion, the best price and allows you to choose the contract with the best terms because they know they're fighting over one another. Buyers are willing to let some things go in order to be the one that buys the house. But then the seller's kind of left with, well, did I get everything that I could have out of the process? I would say that in most instances, the answer is yes, unless they're making a really quick decision on an offer without waiting for a few other offers to come in. And again, we have to take that process, we have to be very careful with that because we don't want to have somebody essentially pay what we're asking, hope that something else is going to come in, and then the buyer that was willing to give us everything that we wanted says, yeah, you're just kind of using my offer to bait the line and get a bunch of other offers. We're out. We found something else. But of course, the other strategy is, I think it's worth, let's just random number. I think it's worth $500,000. I want to list it at $535,000. Let's see what buyers do with that. And I'll tell you that in a market like this, I continue to be surprised at the amount buyers are willing to pay for properties. So it's not necessarily a matter of which strategy is right or wrong, which one is better than the other. I think it ultimately comes down to what your goals are as a seller. If you think about it, there's really only a few kind of main objectives that sellers have when selling a property. Either they need to sell it quickly because they have some sort of time frame they have to work with, whether it be, hey, I'm moving and I'm starting another job in a different location, or, you know what, I found a home that I want to buy. I don't want to mess around. I want to get this one sold so I can buy that one because it's a great fit. Or maybe there's some sort of distress, right? Hey, I've got to sell this property and kind of stop the bleeding. I need to get out before things get worse. Then you have other folks that say, I don't really care how long it takes. I'm not in a rush to sell. This is purely an opportunistic sale. I realize that the market is great. I realize that I can sell for basically top dollar. And that's what I want. I'm not going to entertain or concede on many things because I realize that the market's in my favor. And then you have the folks that say, look, I just want a fair price in a relatively reasonable amount of time to sell my property, but I just don't want the inconvenience that comes with selling a property. I want this to be an easy transaction. And so what we've been working really hard on, really over the past several years, right? But especially over the course of the pandemic, is creating options for people that allow them to say, here's what my goal is, that then say to us, okay, well, if that's what you're trying to accomplish, then this is what I think would work best for you. And so when we come back, I'm going to talk about some of these different options that we have for sellers, and we're also going to talk about buyers. What are you guys doing in a market where sellers kind of hold the cards? They've got their deck stacked in their favor. How can we get around some of that stuff? What do we need to be aware of, and what are some things that we can kind of concede on to allow us to purchase the property rather than just kind of lose out on opportunity after opportunity? And you're not buying your favorite home, you're buying your favorite home the sixth time you find your favorite home, if you know what I mean. So we're going to talk more about that when we come back. Stick around. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com. And remember, if you want to reach out to me, talk a little bit more about what you guys have planned, my private number is 843-400-8009. That's 843-400-8009. Listingsincharleston.com is our website, or you can always send an email, brian@brianbeattyteam.com. Stick around. We'll be right back.
More stimulating talk on real estate matters with Brian Beatty next on 1250 WTMA. 1250 WTMA. Now, the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show continues on Charleston's Big Talker, 1250 WTMA.
Welcome back, Charleston, as the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show continues here on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com. I'm, of course, your host, Brian Beatty, giving you my expert news and reviews of the real estate market here on this program for the past 8 years. Been licensed and selling for 16 and the top 1% of agents for the past 11. And here to talk about selling a property right now in this type of market, with inventory being incredibly low, with competition being very low, and really a slew of buyers that are kind of just watching the market like a hawk, waiting for new properties to hit the market. And then as soon as those properties hit the market, you as a seller get swarmed. In most instances, that's frankly exactly what's happening. So in the last segment, we were talking about some of the different kind of key goals that a seller has when selling a property. Either I need to sell it now, I have some sort of constraint. That means that I don't have time to mess around, I need to sell my property. That doesn't always mean distress. It could be, hey, I have a house that I want to buy, and I need to sell my home relatively quickly in order to be able to buy that, because that seller that's selling the home I want to buy isn't going to wait around on me. They're not going to let me kind of push the envelope, so to speak, on pricing and have it take a few months to sell. This needs to get done, and I need it done fairly quickly. Of course, you have other folks that say, hey, I don't really care how long it takes to sell. I want the most money I can possibly get, which means that you might have to say no to an offer or two or three from folks that want a little bit of a quote-unquote deal in order to get the price that you want. I've had some sellers in this market that have taken well above the average days on market, which is currently 41 days right now in our market, although we all know that the majority of properties that are priced well, in good condition, marketed well, they're going to sell in a week or less. But we've had some folks that have held out for higher prices, and it's worked. It's just, you have to have the confidence in the process, and you have to have realistic expectations about what buyers are going to say, while also realizing that in most instances, and this is, I was explaining this to somebody a few days ago, in most instances, you kind of have to look at a listing almost as like a depreciating asset. The longer you hold on to it, the less it's worth to the general public, because of that perception that, hey, if this hasn't sold, there must be some reason why. That's when having an experienced agent comes into play. Anytime we have a property that's been on the market for, say, more than 2 months, we almost always get the question of, hey, why has this been on the market so long? What's going on with this? Why isn't this sold? And again, it depends on the seller's strategy. Don't get me wrong. There are plenty of instances where a seller and an agent work together, and the service, the ability of the agent just isn't quite on par with what that seller thought they were getting. I mean, over 60% of the listings that my team sell were previously listed with another real estate agent, if it gives you any indication. So with these folks, it really just depends on that particular seller's level of motivation. We have a lot of folks that are selling right now that are just saying, hey, I don't have to sell. So let me just put that on the table right now. This is not a requirement. There's nothing pushing me out of this house, but I see the opportunity. I'll tell you, we're doing this a lot with land right now. We are helping people cash in on land, more so than we ever have. We're selling a ton of it right now. So you have these folks that look at the market opportunistically and they say, hey, I want a really good price. And you've got that type of seller as well. But then you also have the folks that say, look, I just want a reasonable transaction. I know that it's a seller's market, so I know I'm going to get a good price for my house. But I want the process to be simple. I want it to be easy. I don't want to be in this situation where, a few days before closing, things hit the fan and now I've got to start over. And so depending upon the situation of the seller and really what they want out of the transaction, we have a bunch of different options for them. So for the folks that, want to sell really quickly, they have some sort of time constraint or they have some sort of distress that requires them to sell quickly. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to sell below fair market value. It just means that the strategy you employ solicits immediate offers. So that could be something like underpricing the property by like literally 2%. And I can almost guarantee that you will get multiple offers on that property. The market is so hot right now that it almost prevents a seller on an open market from underselling a property. I mean, that's how competitive the market is right now. So if you're in some sort of time constraint, that's probably the best option. It's just, hey, let's price it at what it's worth, maybe a tick below, and let's let the buyers fight over it. Let's let them be the ones to raise the price against themselves, to be the one that ultimately wins the bid and wins the deal. And this, frankly, is a challenge that I see a lot of for sale by owners going through right now, is they don't really have much of an issue with putting a property under contract, accepting an offer. The challenge comes in when that buyer knows they have the ability to do a home inspection and that it's contingent upon an appraisal and it has all these other built-in contingencies to the contract, which allow them to renegotiate with that seller. And so once that home inspection comes in, whether it's a for sale by owner or it's just a home listed on the open market, those buyers are going to try to beat you up over the things that those inspectors find. And I have seen, I can't even tell you, probably getting close to 10,000 home inspection reports. I can't recall a single one where the inspector said, actually, you know what? There's nothing wrong with this house. Clean bill of health. Way to go. That just doesn't happen. They're going to find something. So these buyers are going to beat you up after that inspection to try and drive that price back down. And the justification is, hey, I'm paying you absolute top dollar for this property with the assumption that it was in good condition. We have found these items. I'd like for you to fix them. It's a reasonable argument, but sellers still have the upper hand. Yes, you might negotiate a little bit back and forth based on some things, or maybe there were some issues that you just didn't know about. It makes sense to address them because the key is once a seller puts a property under contract, that property gets inspected, and then the buyer shares that report with the seller and says, hey, here are all the deficiencies that we found. Here is an addendum to the contract that says you're going to fix these things. If you can't work out a deal, then you as the seller are now obligated to disclose those material defects, present material defects, which means that anybody else that asks, you're going to have to share that information. You really need to do it proactively through a document called a property condition disclosure statement that gives people an understanding of what they're getting themselves into so they can make, informed decisions on the purchase price. So you're going to have to deal with it one way or the other is the bottom line there. So if you're not willing to go through this process of selling it on the open market, we also have access to a bunch of investors that are waiting for deals to come across their desk. They're cash heavy. Inventory is low. Opportunities are few and far between because there's just not much room for investors right now. And it really doesn't make sense in many instances for sellers to sell at a deep discount to an investor so that they can do a deal or two a year and, pocket massive amounts of money. The home run opportunities, so to speak, for investors are very few and far between right now. So if you need just a quick sale, We have access to a bunch of investors. They'll write you a check on the spot. We'll buy the property if we can work out a deal. I'm literally in the middle of one right now where I'm buying a property from a seller that contacted me and said, I don't really want to go through this whole process. It's a rental property. It's in rough shape. I don't want to deal with the process of renovating it. I'd rather just sell it as is, cash in and do something else with the money. And so I'm buying it from him. And I told him up front, which this is the key here. And this is what I think is lacking in our industry, is that there are so many different programs out there, so many different incentives or guarantees. We call them unique selling propositions that entice you to contact an agent. Oh, you're going to give me a guaranteed offer on my home? Well, how much is it? You're going to buy my house? Well, what are you going to offer me? All these different things have caveats. They have asterisks next to them. And I was very clear. I said, hey, we can list this property and I can sell it for more than what I'm buying it for. But if I'm going to buy it, then it needs to be a smart financial decision for me. It needs to be a win-win. So I'm going to put on my investor hat and make you an offer, but just understand that I can very easily take that hat off and put my real estate agent hat back on and get you more money for this house. It's just that that's not what he wanted to do. So we have the ability to buy it from you. We have the ability to have other investors buy it from you. We have the ability to generate multiple offers very quickly. And we have this large stack of buyers that are looking for properties every day. And what's really cool is, and I'm a tech nerd, I will fully admit that I'm a techie guy. And it has served me really well in this job that I have. This life choice that I've made, which is to be a real estate agent. And I love it. And so what's really cool is that I can put in any address into my database. And based on, the bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage, anticipated sales price, I can literally in seconds get a full list of every single buyer that my team and I are communicating with that would be interested in a home like that. And it's usually a few hundred people. And so what we've gotten really good at, especially in a low inventory market, is kind of playing that role of matchmaker. Who are we already communicating with? Who do we know that's looking for a property like this that we can just bring to you directly? What if this buyer can skip to the front of the line and just make you a competitive offer on this house? Doesn't mean you have to take it, but I can get you an offer without having to go through the process of getting professional photos and having your home open and having literally dozens of showings in one weekend, which means you need to take a trip because you can't live in your house. I mean, you can't be there when people are showing it. Well, I suppose you can, but you're not supposed to. So if you want to skip to the head of the line, either as a buyer, let us know what you're looking for, and when we communicate with sellers, we'll bring those off-market opportunities to you. Or as a seller, if you don't want to go on the open market, let us know. We'll tell you which buyers we have. It's really become simple in our world, in my team, to connect people. And that's, I think, what's making the big difference. And the challenge that real estate agents have is that, quite frankly, they just don't have the structure, the systems, the processes built into their business model to be able to accomplish something like that. It has taken quite a bit of time and effort for us to be able to have the ability to do that. You would think that that's fairly commonplace with regard to real estate software, but it's just not. So that's been pretty fun, pretty exciting to be able to just say, hey, if you want to sell your property, here are all the people that we're working with. And I literally show them the report. I mean, I don't give it to them because it has their name, their number, their email address, other homes they've looked at, their buying time frame. And I say, hey, here's the list of people that we can call today. I've got 24 people on my team. We can get through basically any list in a day and have those conversations. See if one of these buyers wants to purchase your home. And the cool thing about that is that it doesn't have to be an immediate sale. We have folks that are looking in 3 to 6 months. If you as a seller say, yeah, I'd like to sell my home at some point in time this summer, who do you have that might be interested? Not only are we matching up the property with a buyer, but we're also matching up time frames. So if that's something you want to learn more about, feel free to give me a call. I'd love to walk you through it. See if, and I'll, even if you're just curious, I'll run the analysis for you. I'll say, hey, based on what we're looking at, we have, 136 buyers that we're communicating with right now that are interested in a home like yours. So if that's something you want to walk through with me, feel free to give me a call, 843-400-8009. That's 843-400-8009. Check us out online, listingsincharleston.com, or send an email to brian@brianbeattyteam.com. Stick around. We're going to talk about this just a little bit more before we talk about buying a home in this market. And then we're also going to talk about if you're cash heavy right now, if you're thinking about investing in real estate, is this the right time? Should you wait? Should you jump on an opportunity if one presents itself? Let's get into that in greater detail here in a little bit as the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show continues on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com.
Have a real estate question? Ask Brian Beatty. Send him an email, lowcountryhomesales@gmail.com. The Brian Beatty Real Estate Show is on 1250 WTMA. 1250 WTMA. Expert news and views on the low country real estate scene. The Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on 1250 WTMA.
Welcome back, Charleston, as the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show continues here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com. I always like to take a little bit of time and just say that I appreciate you listening to this program. Thank you to those of you that are loyal listeners. Some of you have gotten a few calls in the past week or two from folks that have actually listened to this show for years, which is really cool. So I just want to say thank you for that. I have every intention of continuing to do this show and providing you guys with my opinion of the real estate market, news within it, help you guys understand what you need to know and build expectations around buying, selling, and investing real estate in the Charleston area. And of course, we use national, regional, and local data to support those opinions and that guidance. But this is an educational program. This is not me getting up here for an hour and giving you a long sales pitch. It's just I want you to understand what your options are and what you should expect if you're going to get into the market. So if that's something I can help you with, and really to show our appreciation and to also just help you understand that we understand market dynamics just as much as you want a good deal and you want an experienced, credible, well-known agent, we've reduced our listing commission to 2.4%. You know, we understand that properties are selling faster. We have less carrying costs. We have less time invested per deal if it's going to sell quickly. And so we want to pass those savings on to you. So 2.4 listing percent. If you want to reach out to me, if you want to have a conversation about working together, if you just are curious about the market, want to know how much your home is worth, you want to know how many buyers we might have for your property based on our last segment, feel free to give me a call or text me. My number is 843-400-8009. That's 400-8009. You can check us out online, listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. Or you can send me an email, brian@brianbeattyteam.com. So we've talked about some of these different options for selling a property, whether it's us buying it from you, using one of our investors to purchase the property, bringing you a buyer directly. Of course, we can just place the property on the open market at a reasonable price, which we anticipate will cause the home to sell really probably within 2 weeks, usually no more than that. Our average days on market is a little less than a week right now. And for that, we're doing a 2.4% commission. And we're not, by the way, that does not mean that we have reduced things on our end or taken away any benefit to you, the seller, in the form of marketing efforts. In fact, we're spending more money than we ever have on marketing our properties to make sure that as soon as that property hits the market, you have global exposure. Because when we market a property, there's two essential tactics that we use, or two different categories of marketing, so to speak. One is reactive and one is proactive. So reactive is all the stuff that is going to happen no matter what. Like when we put it on the MLS, it goes in front of all the agents. It gets sent out as emails to buyers they're working with. It goes on literally thousands of websites, every agent's website, every brokerage's website, Zillow, Realtor.com, Homes.com, you name it, it goes on those websites. And then we just hopefully wait for those people to respond. But we also have to have proactive marketing efforts. And those are things like sifting through all of the real estate agents, like 7,300 of them or so in the Charleston area, and identifying the people that are showing properties in your area and price range, calling them, looking at who is sending properties to buyers in which your home might fit their search criteria. We call them. We do targeted real estate ads on social media where we know, based on demographics, search criteria online, i.e., they're searching for a home in Mount Pleasant within a certain price range. We have access to that kind of data, and we can also look at online behavior. Who is searching things online? Who's doing research? Who's providing us with behavior that leads us to believe they are getting ready to move, ready to buy a house, ready to sell a house. All of those things are tracked, whether you, I suppose you do have some control over it, but by and large, everything you do online is tracked and then sold to companies to market products to you that fit your online behavior. We do the same thing just from a real estate perspective. And to my knowledge, we're the only team in Charleston that's doing that. It's worked incredibly well for us. That's also why we have the ability to literally bring you buyers for your listing through the database we've amassed after having done this for years. So there's another option here, and that's for the folks that realize, I could sell my home for a lot more money if I just did some work to it, but I don't have the cash. I don't have the wherewithal or the know-how to maximize my sales price. So that's where we, enter with the Renovate to Sell program. We'll line up the financing to make the repairs. We'll manage the process because now we're looking at the property essentially as a flip. Rather than selling to an investor and letting them make the money, why don't you just invest the money yourself and you be the one to pocket the profit? We'll walk you through that whole process. We'll show you how this works. We'll do an analysis as is. We'll talk about the cost of financing the renovation, and we'll talk about the after renovation value. And so long as it makes sense, which in most instances it does, why not go through that process if you're not in a crunch for time and make more money on the sale? Net more money on the sale. Of course, it's going to sell more because it'll be worth more, but have you netted more money? That's the analysis that we go through with you. And if that's something you're interested in, man, I'll tell you, there's a big opportunity for a lot of folks right now that have owned homes for, several years, that they know their kitchen needs to be updated. They know their bathrooms need to be updated. Maybe they're looking at some flooring or some paint, and they know that there's an opportunity. They just don't have access to the cash to do it. Or maybe you just need some direction. Maybe you've got a few $1,000s that you want to put into the property, and you just want to know where to put it. How do I maximize my investment to net the most money possible? We go through this all the time with people. And frankly, I prefer it if you call me before you start making those changes, because we have access to incredible contractors and vendors that give us discount pricing because we feed them a lot of business. So we've kind of taken the guesswork out of you determining whether a contractor is going to do right by you and do a good job and have it be cost appropriate, because there are so many contractors out there that are cleaning up right now. So if that's something you're interested in, I'm happy to walk you through that process. I have personally renovated, bought, sold, flipped millions and millions of dollars worth of real estate. Happy to give you the benefit of what I've put my money where my mouth is, essentially, on this particular topic. But I've also helped, I don't know, I can't even tell you how many hundreds of transactions on the investment side of real estate. So if that's something you're interested in, 843-400-8009 is my cell, 843-400-8009. Or check us out online, listingsincharleston.com. And so there's one other kind of major component here to the process of selling a home, and that's selling a home and buying another. And this is where the convenience of working with a team that has their stuff together really comes into play. Because we've got a lot of moving parts when we're selling a home and buying another. We're trying to match up closing dates. We're doing two transactions that basically need to fall in line like dominoes. And there are a lot of things that happen between the lines, behind the scenes, that you need to be aware of, that we need to plan for, that we need to have been through time and time again, have the experience to confidently say to a seller, this is how this is going to work out. This is what we're aiming for. And it's, of course, our mission to accomplish that goal, right? To do everything that we set out to do. We walk you through the whole process. And, the reality is most sellers right now are very hesitant to accept an offer that has multiple contingencies to it. I mean, if you think about it, when you make an offer and you have to sell your home first, there's only so much a lender can do to put something on a piece of paper to give a seller confidence that you can actually buy their house, because you still have to sell yours. You still have to qualify for financing for the new one. You still have to get the home inspection. You have to get an appraisal. There are all these things that happen between the time the contract is signed between the buyer and the seller and closing. And so we've found two different ways of really alleviating this process for folks. And I want to talk about that next. This is pretty incredible stuff. So stick around. You're going to want to hear this. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com. Remember, if you want to reach out to me, 843-400-8009, 400-8009. Check us out online, listingsincharleston.com, or email me, brian@brianbeattyteam.com. Stick around for the last few minutes of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show right here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA.
Find Brian Beatty online at listingsincharleston.com. The Brian Beatty Real Estate Show continues next on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA.
1250 WTMA, the Big Talker.
Now, here's more of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA.
Welcome back, folks, to the last few minutes of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com. So I want to talk about this program that we have been able to tap into that frankly has been a game changer for a lot of buyers in this market right now. It also is very applicable to folks that want to sell their home and buy another. So let me kind of build a little backstory here. As inventory has continued to come down, as the market in and of itself has become more and more competitive, buyers are trying to find ways to make their offer more appealing to sellers. One of the most aggressive ways they can do that for folks that are going to get a mortgage is to waive the financing contingency, to waive the appraisal contingency. So what I mean by that is, if you look at the contract, it says, hey, we're going to get a mortgage. This purchase is contingent upon us getting a mortgage. And our contract in South Carolina, I'll tell you, I can't get on a soapbox because I don't have time about it, but it is extremely buyer friendly. It doesn't do many favors for the seller. One example of that is in the financing contingency in the actual contract. It literally says the financing contingency expires at closing. So what that really means is that if you're a buyer and at any point in time, even a day before closing, the lender says, hey, sorry, you know what? Can't get you financing. My bad. Then you as the buyer get to say, hey, seller, sorry, can't get financing. My bad. And you have the right to get your earnest money back. I mean, it's incredible that a seller can go through this process, line up, moving, start to pack their home. And then the day before closing, the lender says, yeah, actually, we can't get them financed. And you think about it. You think about the likelihood of that happening. It's not all that far off. I mean, think about how incredibly busy lenders are right now, how busy agents are. Everybody's trying to do the best they can with the market in the current condition it's in. And so what we have discovered is that providing that seller with peace of mind that, hey, this deal is going to close no matter what. As soon as we get through the inspection, if we can, we'll see what happens with the inspection. We'll do some separate negotiating there. But once that happens, barring some sort of natural disaster or something horrible happening, we're closing on this property. We're able to do that because of this program that I've been connected with, which has some pretty deep pockets. They've got $200 million that they can play with here. And so here's how this works. Let's say that you're a buyer. I'll give you an example. Let's say you're a buyer and you're getting an FHA loan, which is 3.5% down. So you're financing the vast majority of that purchase. Now, let's say that a property is listed for $300,000, and you offer $310,000, $10,000 above the asking price. Is there a likelihood that the property will appraise for less than the contract amount? Well, yes, there's always a likelihood or a chance that will happen. But then what is the likelihood that the buyer has enough cash on hand to be able to make up the difference between the appraised amount and the contract amount? Because if an appraisal comes in for less than the contract amount, You as a buyer have to make up that difference in cash. And of course, it's a separate point of negotiation. You can always try and get the seller to sell it for less. Most sellers in this market aren't doing that. They might negotiate with you a little bit. Most won't. So you as the buyer have to be liquid enough to come to the table with additional cash on top of your down payment, on top of your closing costs, on top of the cost of the inspection and some of the other out-of-pocket costs that you might incur, like an appraisal. So what buyers have been doing is they've been waiving the financing contingency through this program because this program says, hey, no matter what, we will close on this property even if we have to pay cash for it. This program will literally buy that property for cash. Now, for them to give that seller the promise that this will close cash no matter what, which makes you as the buyer appear as though you are a cash buyer, is just 1%. Just 1%. If you're a buyer in this market and you're out there waiving financing contingencies in order to get your deal accepted, which is becoming more and more commonplace, if you don't get financing, you're going to lose your earnest money, which is 1% to 2% of the purchase price anyways. So you might as well go through this program and appear to the seller as though, hey, guess what? No matter what, this deal is going to close. If I can't get a mortgage in time, this company will buy it for cash. And it just costs you 1%. Now, if they actually have to buy it, then they'll buy it, and then they'll just rent the property to you for up to 6 months, and that just costs you 2%. It's incredible to me how creative some of these different programs have become. Think about the person that needs to sell their home and buy another. If you make an offer on that property that you want to buy, you don't have to use a home sale contingency. You can just say, hey, we're going to close on this thing, guaranteed. If we can't close it on time, if I can't sell my home in time, then this company will buy it for cash. Some people are electing to go this route because they want to have this company buy the property for them. They'll pay rent until they close themselves, but it lets them move out of their house, stage it, make it look really nice, and sell it for more than 2% more than what it would typically sell for. Maybe they do a little work to it. And now they've actually made money through this process. They've gotten a guaranteed cash closing. It's only cost them 2%. They sold their property that they were going to sell for more money because now they can treat it like, kind of an actual product rather than live in the process or live in the home and try and renovate while you're living in it and on juggling the process of selling and buying, which can be a little cumbersome. And so this process has opened the door for so many people. The folks that don't want to really run the risk of losing the earnest money and not get the house, this guarantees them the house. It just costs them 2%. The folks that need to sell their home, rather than having a seller receive that offer and say, sorry, I'm not waiting around for you to get your home ready and you put your home on the market and you accept an offer and then maybe that deal potentially fall through. But the beauty is, if you go through this program, you can still do those things. You can still go and get your own mortgage and close on time. You can still sell your home and close at or before you buy the new one, and you don't have to pay this company. It's just 1% for that kind of protection, for the guarantee that no matter what, it's going to close for 1%. So it's really been an incredible game changer for my team to allow these people the ability to be a guaranteed cash buyer, whether you need to sell your home and buy another, or you just want to be the person that the seller chooses in a multiple offer situation. Because what we really don't want to do is we don't want to start waiving so many contingencies that the risk associated with buying a home is unappetizing. So if that's something you'd like to learn more about, we're putting a lot of people through the program right now. It's been incredible. That, on top of the 2.4% listing commission, we're trying to do everything we can to be creative and offer solutions as a real estate company. So if I can walk you through that process, feel free to give me a call, 843-400-8009. That's 843-400-8009. You can check us out online, listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. Or you can send me an email, brian@brianbeattyteam.com. Thanks a lot, Charleston. Enjoy your weekend, and thanks for listening to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com.
Join us for another edition of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show next Saturday morning at 9 and Sunday morning at 10. Contact Brian Beatty online at listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. Or call him at 843-400-8009. That's 843-400-8009.